the studio, for the first time, is David Tizzard. David has lived and worked in Korea for nearly 10 years now, and he is currently a professor at Seoul Women's University, where he teaches multiple facets of English. He recently completed a postgraduate degree in Asian Studies, focusing on Korean and Eastern history and philosophy. As well as reading and language, he has a keen interest in music and has been a part of the Korean live scene for a while now, playing at festivals and releasing albums with his bands. He is married to his lovely wife, Jody, and I believe you have some great news for us, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, yes. Our first son, Edward, was born on Monday.
That's fantastic. I would like to be one of the first to congratulate you. It's such an amazing occurrence.
Thank you very much. It's nice to announce it on the radio, and maybe Edward will listen to this in the future and say, "Father, what are you doing to me?"
Well, make sure we have to get this one for you.
Sure.
Actually, I have a question for you that I'm dying to know. I actually go around the Korean live scene quite a bit, and I was wondering, what kind of bands are you in? Where do you play?
Locally and around, in Seoul we play in Itaewon, Hongdae, Gyeongnidan has become a place recently. It's been something that I've been doing since about 2005, 2006. So
for quite a while then.
I've played in almost all the places.
Yeah.
It's good fun. It's something to do on a weekend.
What kind of music do you play?
Original rock. Focus on writing songs and trying to do something that's unique, honest. It's not too modern or groundbreaking, but it's just something that comes from within.
Honestly, that is the perfect segment, I feel, because a lot of what I hear happens to just be cover bands, and it's really refreshing to know that there is someone out there that is creating some original stuff to play around locally.
It's important to do, I think. I mean, and it has to represent honesty of the person doing it and the environment that you do it in. It's good to try to represent Seoul as a city, as an area, and give a reflection of that through music, which is great to do.
Absolutely. And I understand that the writer and the work that you chose today is quite creative himself. If you don't mind me asking, what you'd like to share with us today?
For this section, I thought I would start with Jorge Luis Borges, who's an Argentinian writer and very creative. He had a great proclivity to blur the lines between reality and fiction, where the two would sort of mesh together and you would be unsure which was true and which was not. He was a great japester.
Well, that is right up my alley.
That's good that you have that sense of humor and that way of looking at it. Yeah, it's something that he did really well. He would often write fake book reviews. He would write reviews of books that didn't exist, and people would read about them and then try to order the book, only to find out that Borges had just made it up.
That sounds very much like H.P. Lovecraft, actually, and the Necronomicon.
Yes.
Yeah, how people believed in it so much, he wrote so well about it, that they started believing in the mythology behind it.
And then if they do start believing it, then maybe it does become real. I mean, that sort of asks some very important questions where the line is drawn between the two. And this is something that Borges did, I think, very well. It's interesting to note that he only started writing fiction. He was considered a proponent or a pioneer of a genre called magical realism. He only started doing this after he was in a coma.
Oh,
before he went into a coma, he would write book reviews, real book reviews now, not joke ones. He would write book reviews and poetry. He suffered from blindness. Borges, as a writer, he was always destined to go blind as his father and his grandfather, his great-grandfather. He came from a line of people that had eye problems and went blind. As his eyesight deteriorated, he walked into a glass pane on his way to meet a woman. From that, he went into a coma for about sort of 8 to 10 days. And only after he came out of that, he decided that he would decide to write fiction.
So how would you say that this impacted the work he created afterwards?
I've never been in a coma. And touch wood, I hope never that I do or that anyone else does. That must have had a big thing where you become lost inside yourself, a labyrinth or a maze. And these were big themes in his work. So that has got to have played a huge part in doing what he produced. And if that hadn't happened, Borges would have probably faded into intellectual obscurity, because it was after his coma and these short stories that he wrote around the 1940s and 50s that really propelled him to fame.
So what is the work that you want to focus on to introduce us to this dynamic writer?
It was a tough choice, and it could be very controversial what I would choose, but I chose one called The Circular Ruins. It was one of the first ones that really grabbed me from him, and it stayed with me ever since. The Circular Ruins was said it was based on a line he read in Alice in Wonderland, and it's since gone on to inspire Christopher Nolan's Inception as a movie. So it plays a part in culture both before it and afterwards.
So that's taking one huge influence. Obviously, Alice in Wonderland was a groundbreaking work, influenced a lot of different minds and a lot of different writers, and be able to take that idea and grow on it, and then influence future culture. Of course, I guess that's the goal of any writer out there.
And it puts it in with the other things. It doesn't stand alone, which I think Borges believed that literature wasn't written by any one person, it was written by the human spirit, which I think is a very nice perspective to have on things, that individuals don't so much take part, but we do it collectively. And so placing him after Alice in Wonderland and before things that come out, I think that's very important to give him some grounding or a position in his role in it.
So before we actually go on to break, do you mind giving us a little synopsis on what, maybe on the surface level, The Circular Ruins was about?
The Circular Ruins, it's a very short story. I mean, if you were to read it online or if you read it in his collection, it was originally published in English in 1949 in my Spanish pronunciation isn't very good, I'm afraid, in Ficciones, fictions. It's very short. It'd take you 10 minutes to read.
No, I love it. Honestly, one of my favorite quotes is by Mark Twain, who says, "If I had more time, I would have written a shorter book." So it just goes to show he, truly try and cut away all the things that were unnecessary and give you the impact that he was looking for.
I do like that one from Twain. There's another one from Pascal as well. He said, "Forgive me, the letter that I've written today is so long, but I did not have the time to make it shorter." Sometimes we need to condense things. The Circular Ruins, a very short work, is about an unnamed protagonist going to an unnamed place. Downriver, he arrives in a boat, and he has an objective, and his objective is to create somebody. That is
create, like from conception, like a person from the ground up.
That's correct.
Not in the sense of giving birth per se, but truly just from the strength of his mind.
That's exactly it. There's a real absence of romance and physical love all throughout Borges's work. It doesn't really exist there. So when he's trying to create someone, he's going away from sort of the more biological nature that you've just mentioned there. He's trying to will something into existence.
So is there a reason why he wants to obtain this goal? Something that may be tormenting him, the focused goal, a focused reason, like his, does he have like agony against the world and wants to have companionship? What could be the goal for wanting to create somebody from nothing, essentially?
It's a very good question, and some people have said that this might be a reference to Borges's father in this work. The protagonist of The Circular Ruins we know nothing about. At some points he's described as a stoic man, a wizard. He's given quite a few different descriptions. He's never quite solidified into one person. So it's very hard to ascertain or to guess what might his motivations be. We just know that he has this desire to create somebody. The way Borges doesn't write characters, he said himself that he never wrote characters because he wanted to focus on ideas. Everybody that appeared in his stories was an embodiment of himself.
And, by making an unnamed protagonist and one that is hard to nail down, would also enable any reader to be able to fit themselves in the shoes as well and make it a personal journey, and not just one that you're reading off a page, I suppose.
And there we get empathy and living vicariously. Borges says that if you read Shakespeare, you become Shakespeare. If you read Dostoevsky, you become that person. So there's blurring the lines not just between reality and fiction, but between reader and writer, which is wonderful.
And that's definitely an idea I want to come back to, but let's take a short break. I understand you have a song that's fitting, picked out for us. Would you mind introducing that to us?
Of course. One of the key themes in Borges's work is circular time and time. So I've chosen a song called The Clock by Ty Segall, which I think really embodies this with the music, the guitar riff, and has a wonderful chorus and string section.
Oh, certainly a beautiful piece. So we'll get to that piece here. It is Ty Segall's The Clock. That was Ty Siegel's The Clock. I am on Modern Classics right now on the bookend with our new guest, David Tizzard, and we are talking about Jorge Luis Borges' novella, The Circular Ruins. Before the break, we talked about Jorge Luis Borges' his work, the heart of what he was trying to accomplish, and cover the basics of The Circular Ruins, which we have learned is a bit of a circular novel that has a much deeper meaning than just what the surface would apply.
Sure, we talked about the protagonist's aims. If I could very quickly, I'll just read you 2 sentences that I've taken out of it and just give the readers an idea of his prose and the story itself.
Yes, please.
The purpose which guided him was not impossible, though supernatural. He wanted to dream a man. He wanted to dream him in minute entirety and impose him on reality.
That is a fascinating play on words there, taking the idea of not possible, that is not impossible, though supernatural.
Exactly.
So the first reaction I would have is, well, kind of like a religious connotation, I guess, where the power of faith might allow a miracle to become reality. Is that the kind of idea that Borges is looking for?
There are sort of religious connotations to some of his work, but I don't think it's really overt. I think it's just part of the human existence that he does focus on. It could also be seen linguistically to be quite playful as well, not just based on religious faith, but something could be impossible, but it could be something else. It's a paradox that he creates, and I think that's wonderful what he does there with language. The idea of imposing someone from a dream onto reality as well, again, that would be logically impossible. We don't think that can happen, but that's what he's trying to do. I see a great connection here. There was a story in early Taoism, as you've mentioned religion, there was a story of early Taoism. My Chinese pronunciation is about as terrible as my Spanish, so here we go again. The second book of Taoism was the Zhangzi, and in that there is the famous parable, which you may recognize, of a man who one day dreamt he was a butterfly, and he was flying around the fields as a butterfly landing on the leaves. When he woke up, he asked himself, am I a man dreaming that I was a butterfly, or am I really a butterfly that's now dreaming I'm a man? He asked himself the question, how can we tell the difference? How can we differ between what is our dream and what is reality?
Certainly a existentialist dilemma to the core.
It very much is, because we all dream and it's all something we do, and at times, unless we're well versed in lucid dreaming or something, it's very difficult. Our dreams seem very real to us some evenings. And
so how does Borges take this excerpt that you just read and flesh it out into the reality of the story?
The character tries to impose a man on reality in a couple of different ways. I'm not going to tell too much because it's such a short story. I'm wary of talking too much about it because then it's all gone. He goes through a couple of methods in order to will a man into existence. That's a question that is interesting to contemplate. First, in order to will a man into existence, he imagines a whole student body. It's innumerable, but let's say 1,000 students. And from that 1,000 people that he imagines, he tries to whittle it down through selection to just one. He finds this process not to be correct. So he tries the opposite, and he tries to build somebody from the very bottom upwards. So instead of whittling it down from many to one, he tries to start from nothing and then go to one.
Makes a lot of sense. If one direction doesn't work, go to the polar opposite. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And it also, again, puts two opposites together. So we're not sure which one is the best. But it's about his methods of putting someone onto reality. I'm not giving too much away to say that he does succeed in doing this, because, as Borges himself said, it's not impossible.
That's very true.
In Borges' world. So he does succeed in that, but there's another step that happens. The Circular Ruins, I think it asks two important questions. We've sort of covered them briefly, but I'd just like to clarify them. The first one is, can we will something or someone into existence?
Well, I mean, the first thing I think of, once again, goes back to religion and ideas, concepts like God or a God. A lot of people would think that that is something that is birthed out of the mind of man, and, you know, it may not be made flesh, but it is certainly given enough character to have a tangible reality.
And then, yeah, you're very correct. Then we're asking what is real. Certainly concepts can be born into our knowledge or our existence or understanding. If something physical, tangible can be willed into existence, again, there's something again that he's asking, which I think is very good. I think tying it to religion might be interesting, and that's good that you do that, Kai. The second question relates to the Taoist butterfly parable, which is, how do we know that the world we see around us is real and not a dream?
And that certainly goes back to that the original idea of the Alice in Wonderland too, you know, because Alice, I hope I'm not ruining anything out there, but Alice is dreaming the whole land, the whole Wonderland, and so, you know, it's kind of a self-reflection, who is real, who is not, especially when the experience was so real to them that it left a lasting impression.
Be careful with the century-old spoilers here, Kai.
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland, we give too much away. It seems very obvious to us that we know, Lewis Carroll did it very well, it seems very obvious to us that the world is real, and we are not dreaming this right now as I'm talking to you. But to be able to say for sure, to say definitely that it is real and that last night was a dream, that's very hard. And I think that's something Borges, he does this very subtly. Of course, they seem like, maybe to some people, profound, existential, boring questions. But Borges does this in a subtle way. These questions are hidden in his work. He doesn't throw them down your throat. He doesn't put them at you in a way that seems daunting or formidable. They are just there, scattered throughout his prose, and it's that key to his writing that makes you think afterwards, well, that's what he's asking me.
Wonderful. Well, you've certainly given us a small but meaty task ahead of us, and I hope many of you out there will go out and look for this work, which really does not take very long to read at all. Before we close out our segment, David, do you happen to have a song you'd like to take us out of the hour?
Sure, I do. Catamaran by Caius. The song here talks about traveling on a boat, as the Circular Ruins does at the beginning. And again, there's a sort of ethereal sound to the guitars and the bass. They interplay, and it creates a very dreamlike quality, I believe.
Lovely. I think we can do that for you, possibly from a namesake of myself.
Excellent.
Stay tuned for the second hour, but first we're going to play you David's request. This is Caius, Catamaran.